Reading with your kids.
Hola, niho, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni moli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you are joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, Ghana, Himalaya, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is coming to us from Portland, Maine. Her name is Pam Leo. She is known as the Book Fairy, and she is here to celebrate Please Read to Me. Before we invite Pam into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Harry Gets Into the Swing of Things, Book 3 and the Adventures of Harry and Friends series. Does your child give up? Do they have a hard time accomplishing their goals? Harry Gets Into the Swing of Things has helped parents worldwide teach their children not to give up. Watch them flourish today. Get your copy of Harry Gets Into the Swing of Things and all of the great Harry and Friends series on Amazon or wherever books are sold. This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is also brought to you by Candlewick Press, publishers of Tisha and the Blossoms, a great, beautiful picture book written by Wendy Medore and illustrated by Daniel Igneous. After a day of being asked to rush through drawings and speed through recess, Tisha asks Mommy if they can have a little slow down time. Can they walk instead of taking the bus? Can they count cars and seagulls? Can they sit on the bench in the sunshine? This is a tender and really beautiful story about taking time to experience the world around us, listen to one another, and enjoy the little things in life. So very, very important. You and your kids are going to absolutely love Tisha and the Blossoms. It's available now wherever you buy books. And this episode of the podcast is also brought to you by Theodore's Plate, written by Stephen Wade Nebgen. One Christmas Eve, in the land of kings and knights, a weary traveler knocks on the door of a family living in the woods. The family doesn't know that this traveler is a very special guest, and that a simple act of kindness and generosity will make this the most wonderful Christmas ever. Theodore's Plate is a heartwarming and timeless read for the entire family that can be enjoyed any time of the year. Written by Stephen Wade Nebgen, Theodore's Plate tells a story that the world needs to read with messages of hope, kindness, and love. Get your copy today. Theodore's Plate by Stephen Wade Nebgen. Join us right now from the beautiful state of Maine, formerly a part of Massachusetts. You probably didn't know that. We're really excited to welcome the author of Please Read to Me, a beautiful board book by our guest, Pam Leo. Hey, Pam, how are you?
I am well. Happy to be here.
Pam and I just had a lovely conversation. She is now in the Portland area of Maine, but she grew up in a part of Maine that most people don't ever get to visit, a rustic county in the very north of Maine, kind of the top hat of New England.
Yes, I love that title.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, it really is a spectacular part of the world. Most people, when they talk about Maine, they talk about Portland and the coast and Bar Harbor, or as we say in Boston, Bar Harbor. Maybe people have heard of Bangor, but they don't realize that's literally maybe 25% of the state. A good 75-80% of the state is just woodlands and beautiful creatures and spectacular scenery.
There's a joke in Maine that people will say, "Have you lived in Maine your whole life?" And I say, the joke is, "Not yet."
I like that.
I love it.
So tell us all about Please Read to Me.
Okay, well, I was a family child care provider for 22 years, so I read to children a lot. I literally, the first children's books I owned were for my own children. I grew up in Aroostook County, and we were poor, and we just didn't have books. So when my great-grandson was born, I was writing a letter to my granddaughter telling her how important it was going to be to read to him every day starting now. And somehow that letter to her morphed into a poem that I titled, Please Read to Me. And it's been 5 years that it's been my dream to turn that poem into a board book. And this year it happened.
Awesome. Congratulations.
So I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, yeah. Isn't it ironic that here you are living in a part of the world where the paper from most of the children's books was created with? Here you are, you're surrounded by these trees that are going to be turned into paper that will become children's books, and you never had the chance to own a children's book yourself.
Yeah, crazy, huh?
Yeah, it really is. It really is. So now that this dream has come true, what's it feel like to be the author of a children's book that is meant to be read to kids and also for kids to chew on?
Well, it's really funny because the reason it was a board book is I wanted it to be like the first book that new parents got to read to their baby, because it starts right out with Please Read to Me right from the very start. And so we got a Stephen and Tabitha King grant to be able to give the book out free to all new parents coming through the WIC program, women and children. Mm-hmm. And we've also been giving it out to early Head Start children. And I was thinking of it as for a much younger child, but they're loving it. And we're giving it out to pre-K children and even kindergarten children. And the response is just amazing, because one of the pictures in the book shows it's Please Read to Me in the bathroom. And the children will see that amazing illustration. They'll say, look, they're reading on the potty. Can we read on the potty? This is great, because they read the pictures.
Well, that is one of the places I've done a very large percentage of my reading.
I spent many hours sitting on the side of the bathtub reading to my children when they were in the bath. Mm-hmm. So the whole idea is really to read to children everywhere, not to have it just be a bedtime thing. I mean, definitely a bedtime thing. It's like the goodnight kiss. But, so much has happened in the last couple of years. Parents are exhausted, just exhausted. And the last illustration in the book is this little girl with this big stack of books in her arms, and it's Read to Me, Please, is how the book ends. And I think of parents facing that at the end of the day. They're trying to be conscientious and read enough to their children, but the look of that stack of books is sort of overwhelming. And so I've been saying to parents, if you get your children to pick out the books they want for that day in the morning, maybe while you're fixing breakfast, and then, whatever number you pick. So that's your reading throughout the day. And so it's up to you what's left in that pile by bedtime. If you've read throughout the day, there might only be one or two left, and you've done it. And, in order to do that, you have to take books with you everywhere. Mm-hmm. In the car, and, just think about reading, at the grocery store in the line. So have one in your, bag. There's just so many places that we can read. And so that kind of has led to our summer reading challenge, which is called 100 Places Before Fall. So because we're facing this kind of double whammy of not only summer slide, which every year, we're concerned about, but the COVID slide as well, because of the libraries being closed and, children being out, just so many factors. So I thought we need something really exciting for this summer. So the thought of trying to read in 100 different places before fall, people are really jazzed about it. They love it. So very soon on our website, there will be the flyer for it to promote it, and the log where you log the 100 places that you read. And so if anyone doesn't have access to print it out, in Maine at least, the librarians have agreed that if a family comes in and says, will you print this out for me, they will. So I'm really excited to have their support. So it's going to be a fun summer. And Little Free Library just came out with an app for your phone so that wherever you are, you can check and see where there are little free libraries, wherever you are, whether you're in your hometown or traveling. So that kind of turns, we're calling it for this summer, adventure reading.
Mm-hmm.
So it turns our adventure reading challenge kind of like literacy geocaching, you know. Let's find a library, little free library to get a book to read where we're going to be here. And so it gets children off screens because you're outdoors, fresh air, exercise, but there's still that little tad of technology where they get to look at their phone and say, okay, where are the libraries? So we're very excited about it.
Yeah, what a fantastic idea. I love that idea of going on a treasure hunt with kids to find that. And it really is like a treasure hunt because all those little free libraries look like treasure boxes.
They do.
You know, treasure chests. And what a great way to kind of really instill with our kids that reading, it's not a chore. It's a gift. It's a treasure.
It's an adventure.
It's an adventure. Yeah.
And the treasures are between the covers of the book.
Yeah. This is really, really wonderful. I love that Please Read to Me is fun for kids, but I also really respect that it sounds like this book is mainly written for parents to remind them of how important it is to read to their kids.
You got it. That was the whole point. And so the illustrations are really for the children because they can read the book through the illustrations, but the message for the parents, they get it when they're reading it to their children. So it's like a nonverbal message, you know, it's just there, even though it is verbal, they're reading it to their child, but they're internalizing, oh yeah, we could read in all these places. Oh yeah, this could be really fun. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you grew up in difficult circumstances, didn't have a lot of resources, you weren't able to own your own children's book. What a wonderful time we're living in right now where not only that we have apps that give families a chance to access books on their devices, but we also have, you know, these little free libraries and also public libraries where people can go and take advantage. And there really isn't, excuse isn't the word that I wanted to use.
Reason.
Yeah, there's really no reason why families can't get out and get books. I know it's difficult for some families where parents need to work 2 or 3 jobs, but I think it's worth the effort that we get out there.
You know, something about that, what this poem started for me was that I thought, wow, you know, this poem's kind of great. I should see who would like to use it. So I started Googling early literacy sites. And every one I landed on had the same statistic, that 2/3 of the 15.5 million children living in poverty in this country do not own even one book. And as you can tell from my own background, I resonated with that. And I thought, you know what? I can't do anything as one individual about poverty, but I sure as heck can do something about getting books into children's home. There's a statistic that if children own at least 20 books, a minimum 20 books, it will change their whole trajectory in education. Because for the first three grades up through grade 3, they're learning to read. But from 4th grade forward, they're reading to learn. So if they haven't learned to read by 4th grade, they're going to struggle the rest of the way through. And a lot of them don't graduate. And, you know, whether or not a child learns to read is going to affect their whole quality of life, their standard of living. It's a human right that we need to make sure, you know, gets met. And there is no shortage of books. None.
Yeah.
The shortage is of book fairies, of enough people to get the books, distribution. So we get books to food pantries because if parents can't afford enough food, they can't afford children's books. This way they come to the food pantry to get some extra food and they can bring home books for their children. I taught my connection parenting classes at the Maine State, at the prison for 18 years. And one of the things those parents taught me is regardless of what their parenting circumstance is, they want to do for their own children. And this gives them the opportunity to do that. They get to come home a hero because they know Bobby loves dinosaurs and Sally loves horses. And so those are the books they pick to bring home. And then they're more invested in reading to them because they picked them out and brought them home. Mm-hmm. And it's just such a great way. And then we do book drives. So children donate their outgrown books. And so it's children providing books for other children, which is amazing because it's really social justice work. You know, it's sort of like I jokingly in private sort of say it's my Robin Hood project. I don't steal the books from the rich, but we get the books from people who no longer need them to the people who do need them. And the community support in Maine has just been phenomenal. Yeah. Just amazing the way the whole community, I call it community supported literacy. And, you know, I just have community partners all over the place and they help me do this.
I love that phrase, community-supported literacy.
Yep. I think takes a community to raise a reader.
Yeah, well, it really does. It's so important to model for kids that reading is important. And, you know, LeVar Burton was on the show, and I asked him, I said, where did you get this passion from reading? And he laughed and he said, my mom. Every time I saw her, if she wasn't reading to me, she was reading a novel, she was reading a magazine, she was reading a newspaper. And so when we're modeling for our own kids, we're letting our kids know. And because we don't live out on the frontier anymore by ourselves, in that little house in the prairie kind of situation. We're living in community. And when our kids grow up in a community where they can see that not only my parents think that reading is important, but the grocer and the teachers and the librarians and the police officers and everybody here is supporting this idea of reading. Gee, maybe I need to pick up on that.
Yeah, maybe this is important. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. The other project that we do, and we did a lot this spring, is called 100 Stories Before First Grade. And remember when they used to do bottle drives? Kids would go through the neighborhood with their little red wagon and collect bottles and cash them in. Well, similar to that, but it's a story drive. And it's stories instead of books, because in Portland, we have a lot of languages spoken, and not all parents read English or have access to multilingual books. So the stories can be oral, which stories originally were anyway. So children from their neighbors, their grandparents, their siblings, their teachers, their librarian, they collect stories and fill in their story log until they have 100. Awesome. And any child who enters first grade having heard 100 stories is in 100 times better shape than a child who hasn't. Yeah. And it takes the burden off the parents because they don't have to read all 100 stories, you know, they can spread that out so that it's community supported. Again, community supported literacy. The community is helping raise that reader. Yeah. And I don't think we always, when we hear Maine, we don't always think of diversity. But Maine is and it's becoming more and more diverse. I know there's a large Somali community in Maine, and there's a Native community in Maine, and all it's way more than that. It's mostly southern Maine, but the school I volunteer at, there are 16 languages spoken at that school. Wow. That inspired me to make it 100 stories before first grade instead of 100 books. Right. And I get wordless books to these families because they can read the pictures, even if they don't read or speak the language. They can read the pictures. So wordless books are high at a premium. I grab everyone I can find. Yeah. I think when I'm hearing from you, not only with your words, but with the passion that you're sharing with us, is that the time that we spend reading with our kids or sharing stories with our kids, it's just another way of letting our kids know that they are so very important to us. They look at us and we are the most important person in their lives, and we are turning around and letting them know that they are also the most important person in our world. Absolutely. You would love what I did this weekend. I've started doing these things that I call rest and reads. So I go to community events, like this past weekend was Mother's Day. And a very special place in Maine to a lot of people is Smiling Hill Farm. And many families go there for ice cream on Mother's Day. And they partnered with me, and I set up my rest and read station, and my whole display was books about moms. And I had done it the prior week when they opened the barnyard, so all the books in the display were about their barnyard animals. But it was so sweet to see these families come over, and I have these straw mats of all different colors. They pick their favorite color mat and sit down on the grass and pick out a book. And for that few minutes while their parents are reading them that story, they get this reconnect with their parent. You know, it's exciting to go to events, but it's also overwhelming. And so for that few minutes, they can reconnect and kind of re-regulate with their parent. And it's just, the parents were so appreciative to me of having this little sweet spot where they could just take a break and come over and pick out a book and just reconnect by reading a story to their child. They loved it. So I want to get those going everywhere. I want it to become so common that parents say, where's the rest and read? You know, like, where's the restroom? Where's your rest and read? And it's such an easy thing to do. And it doesn't, I love doing themed books because to me, relevance is everything. Mm-hmm. But it could be any collection of multi-age books. I mean, picture books are the best multi-age books. I learned so much from children's picture books, but it would be such an easy thing for any organization to do. Just have a spot set aside as a rest and read where parents could just take a break and come over and read a story and reconnect with their child and then go on to the next activity. I'm excited to promote it.
Yeah. You know, my beautiful wife retired from teaching for 34 years now, just this past year. And she enjoys the time to rest and relax. You seem like you're taking this point in your life, and you're, and I guess my wife will come to this point too. It's like, I've done relaxing. There's a lot more to do out in the world. You're doing so much. Where does that passion and energy come from?
Well, I'm 71, and I read this quote once by George Bernard Shaw that he said, I would rather wear out than rust out. And we only have this short time that we're here to make a difference. And I know that what I'm doing is making a difference. I get to see it every day. And I was my mom's caregiver for the past few years, really the whole 6 years I've been on doing this project. So I was kind of balancing both, and she passed this past August. And so it's really my life now. You know, I get to pour all my energy into my grandchildren and this project. And every day I get to work with great people, and children just are, you know, yesterday a little girl asked me if I would read to her. And I said, don't you want your mom to read to you? And her mom said, she would like a story by the Book Fairy. And can I take a picture? And children keep asking me, where are your wings? So I had to come up with some kind of answer to that, because it inevitably came up at every author visit, every time I would go anywhere. Because a lot of times, like a daycare center will do a book drive, and they'll have me come and receive the books and talk to the children about where the books are going to go. And so now I say to the teacher, please tell your children I will not have wings, that I don't get my wings until every child on earth has books.
Wow.
So now we have this thing of how Book Fairy get her wings. Donate books. You know?
That's beautiful. I'm sorry for your loss of your mom, but I know that she must be incredibly proud of what you're doing.
You want to hear something beautiful? Our book is printed by the only U.S. printer of board books, Pint Size Productions, and they sent me the final proof before it was going to print. And I said, oh, I was so happy to get that, because I got to show it to my mom, because she won't still be here in October when the book comes out. They did a special copy of it and overnighted it to us so that I have a picture of my mom reading my book. So she got to see it before she passed. Aww. And we're now going to do a special branch of Book Fairy that's going to be called Book Angel Readers for Seniors, because she was in rehab a number of times. And even though she wasn't able to read to me as a child, for years now, I read to her every night. And when she'd be in rehab, I would still read to her there, and her roommates would love it. And so I thought the best way I could honor my mom is to start this sort of movement to have facilities use their volunteers to read aloud to residents. That And I mean, I've read and researched so much benefit comes from just them being read aloud to.
Sure.
So we're in the process of having a new logo made for that. It's going to be the same Book Fairy logo, but she'll have a halo.
Awesome.
And so any volunteer who volunteers to read to seniors will be, a book angel reader. So I'm excited for that to come forward.
That's really wonderful. And what a great thing for families to do. I know, having my mom spent the last couple of years of her life in a home. And there is very often times, my mom suffered from Parkinson's and dementia, and it was very difficult sometimes when we would go to visit her and she didn't remember who we were. And it was very hard to have conversations with her sometimes, but you
could have read to her.
Yeah, you can just read, and
yes,
when it makes it more comfortable for everybody. And I'm imagining if you have that fourth or fifth grader who's visiting their grandma, and I don't know what to do, and she doesn't remember who I am.
Right.
You can just read her a story.
Yes, and the beautiful thing is this really. If I could ask my mom one question today, it would be, I was posting on our Facebook page this book called Read to Your Baby Every Day, and it was a collection of 30 nursery rhymes. So I was thumbing through it after I posted it, and I was like, wow, I know every one of these nursery rhymes. After 71 years, I still know them. How could this be? And I always wondered, I didn't go to preschool. We didn't have kindergarten when I started school, so I entered first grade never having been read to, and came out of first grade reading. And it always just puzzled me. And suddenly it became clear the only person who could have done that was my mom. Mm-hmm. She had to have taught me. And the great literacy advocate that I adore, Mem Fox, who wrote Reading Magic, says rhymers will be readers. So even though she didn't read to me, she sent me to school well equipped to learn to read because I knew rhymes, and plenty of them. Mm-hmm. So that was just like I cried the whole day I realized that, and just thought, wow, I wish I could have said, Mom, you gave me this gift that I didn't even know you gave me. And so her mom must have taught them to her because they didn't have books either. Yeah. So yeah, rhymers. She said if children know at least 8 nursery rhymes when they start school, it will make a world of difference.
That's so beautiful. Well, I know people are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about Please Read to Me, to find out about all the different community ideas that they can bring to their communities, and also find out more about you.
Well, you can go to bookfairypantryproject.org, and we set up the website intentionally for people to be able to replicate this in their community. Everything they need to know. I mean, my newer projects, I haven't quite gotten them all on there yet. There's been kind of this flurry of activity since the book came out. So they're gradually getting added, then they will be added. But the basic of how do you do these things in your community. Plus what I love is everyone takes what I've put out there and they add their own great idea and energy to it, and they expand it. And I got an email from someone the other day in another state, and they said, well, I went to my food pantry, but it's really small, and they said they don't have room for books. And I said, yeah, we run into that sometimes. So we're suggesting maybe you can put a little free library in that neighborhood. And that's another way to get books to children, because they now have a part of their program that's called Impact Libraries. And it's about getting little free libraries into neighborhoods that really need them. So what we did before I knew about that, during the pandemic when the libraries were closed and the schools were closed, we had neighborhoods where there were families who had no books in their homes. So you'll love this. An Eagle Scout, who is the son of a friend, needed a community project for his Eagle Scout badge. He built us 2 little free libraries that we put in under-resourced neighborhoods. So those neighborhoods had books when the public libraries and the school libraries were closed. And that kind of started me on the road. We're about to put in a 3rd one. And I want to have a little free library in every community in Maine. And I've actually sort of challenged the Boy Scouts of America to, take this on. What if every troop, he was an individual, that was his project, but what if as a troop, they could probably get donated materials from
Sure.
places that sell materials, and all work on building it. And if every community had just even one, I mean, lots more would be great, but if it worldwide, I mean, it's worldwide. The Scouts are a worldwide organization. If in every community they put at least one little free library, how awesome would that be?
That would be very, very awesome. And we've had an awesome time speaking with you. We love your energy. We love Please Read to Me. And we love that you had time to spend with us today. Pam Leo, thank you so much for being with us.
Totally my thrill, as you can tell. Thank you.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Pat Zietlow Miller. She'll be celebrating in our garden. I want to thank the people who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest, Pam Leo, the Book Fairy. Please be sure to check out her website. Also, want to thank our sponsors, The Adventures of Harry and Friends by Sarah Belisa Tucker. Tisha and the Blossoms, great new book from our friends at Canterwood Press. And also Theodore's Plate, written by Stephen Wade Nebgen. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Nicole Belcastro, Ashley Contouris. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.